Hey everyone, welcome to Challenge in the Field Research Review. Today we're going to look at the likelihood of injury between CrossFit and traditional weightlifting. So our article today is titled Likelihood of Injury and Medical Care Between CrossFit and Traditional Weightlifting Participants. We found this article through the Orthopedic Journal of Sports Medicine. It is from 2019, so it's a very recent article. And the study was conducted as a survey. So the authors of the study sent the survey out to CrossFit gyms and traditional gyms in their area in about a 100-mile radius, and they're calling it a cohort study. So that means that they're following a group of people through the course of the study. And they asked all of those people in the survey to take a look at the last 2 years of your training. What injuries did you have? What supplements were you taking? How long did you exercise? And how many days a week did you exercise, among other things. So their hypothesis, when they looked at all of this information, they thought, you know what? We think CrossFit athletes are going to have a higher 2-year rate of injury and severity of injury than the traditional weightlifters. They're going to get hurt more often, and they're going to get hurt worse than weightlifters. So they got back 411 surveys that they used from participants who were 18 years or older. So no one under the age of 18 was in on this. The average age of the 122 CrossFitters was 37 years old, and 69 of those were women. 289 weightlifters, their average age was 31, and 87 of those were women. It was very interesting to the authors that there were more women in the CrossFit group than there were males. So overall, those CrossFitters reported an average of about 4.5 days, just under 4.4 days of working out each week, while the lifters did 4.5 days exactly as an average each week. And both groups had about an hour to an hour and a half, which is pretty typical among training nowadays. So the CrossFitters, their injuries happened during their clean and jerk, happened during their deadlifts, and happened during snatch. For the lifters, their injuries occurred during a barbell or a dumbbell bench press. They also were injured during deadlifts, and back squats was their other most injured exercise. I find it very interesting that deadlift is in both groups. That tells me something, that we need to work on our deadlifts. Another interesting find that I saw in here was that the creatine, when they looked at supplement use and injury, creatine had a higher rate of injury than those that didn't use it, which was really, really interesting. And my personal thoughts on that is, maybe it's like pre-workout. Creatine is pre-workout, so maybe you feel like you can do more, you can lift heavier, and you probably really shouldn't be lifting heavier, and that kind of leads to that injury. Again, that's just my thoughts on it. But another reason that CrossFitters may have their higher injury rate, they said that maybe the competition has something to do with it. It's a very competitive sport, and you're trying to push yourself to your personal limitations past all of your physical fatigue, and form is usually something to break down during that, and that leads to your injury. So something that they say might help as a coach, having a CrossFit coach there to identify when our form starts to break down, and make the corrections either to the form or make the corrections to the weight and how much you're lifting or how many reps you do or something like that, scaling it. So when we look at all the conclusions for this that the authors found is, number one, for those CrossFit athletes, they are 1 to 3 times more likely to self-report an injury and are 1.86 times more likely to seek medical care for that injury, whether it's a doctor, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, what have you. Number two, among both groups, the most injured part of the body was the shoulder. Second was the back, followed third by the hip. Number three, males were more likely to get injured than the females were. We like to lift heavy, and that kind of is what leads into it. Number four, likelihood of injury decreases 13% for every 10-year increase of age. I thought that one was pretty interesting. That basically says for every decade that you have lived, you are less likely by 13% each decade to get an injury, and that's attributed to the education that you have as you keep lifting, the experience that you have with your lifts. You know more about what you can and cannot do. That really what plays into it. So that's all we got for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. We'll see you next time.